it. One lady asked for his Vax card and he quits.
No, he said it's too.
We don't need those cops. That guy's a pussy. That's all it takes.
Hey, pussies.
Imagine you're involved in shootouts, violence, all the crazy shit you see in car accidents. But some lady, while you're getting a cup of coffee, asks for your Vax card. Too much.
Pussy's got to live too, right?
Yeah, sure. Just shouldn't be a cop.
Oh, so wait a second. So here's another story from my
Not that I'm on that lady's side at all, but it's not even her fault. It's like the man.
Yeah, you're right. So you are right. So anyway,
keep her job.
so I got a friend who's a retired pilot. His son is a operative airline pilot. He's flies for really big carriers. And the son wrote an article for Aviation Magazine. He says he's going through security to get on his plane to the crew only. They say, beep, 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 beep. Excuse me, sir. I'm going to have to look at your bag. They open his bag. They say, what's this? He says, it's a nail clip. They say, I'm sorry, sir, you can't pick it up. He says, well, okay, why? She says, because you might use it to take control of the aircraft.
A nail clipper?
He's the pilot. He's a fucking pilot. And they say, you might. He said, ma'am, it's my job to take control of the aircraft.
That's real? This is a real conversation?
Look it up. It's in, I think, Flying Magazine. Then he says, wait a second. He says, ma'am, I'm armed. I have a pistol right here. I have a federal permit. I have a blah, 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 blah on the plane. I'm carrying a gun on the plane, and you want to take my nail clipper? I'm sorry. She says, what can I do? So, okay. It's modern life.
That's a real story?
Yes.
They kept the nail clipper, and he kept his gun.
Yeah.
And everything's fine.
Yeah.
It's adorable. I mean, that's what happens when you have to blindly follow rules, right?
Yeah.
So back to this prosperity thing.
Yeah.
So what about prosperity is fucking us up?
Well, let me ask you a question. When you were a kid, right, walking down the street, if you saw a nickel, would you pick it up?
Yes.
Would you do it now?
No, but I'm rich.
Exactly.
I might pick it up. I doubt it. I might. Probably not. But I mean, I might because I feel like, I don't know.
Well, see,
If it was $1, I'd pick up $1.
yeah, I would too. But, it's not worth anything anymore. So you could use it for waste paper. Yeah.
You could send a letter.
You could, yeah,
That's
except the
$1.
post office ain't delivering them anymore.
They're not? What do they do with them?
I don't know, but
They deliver mail.
well, they don't deliver my mail. I'll tell you why. It's because I read the fountain pen.
Do you really? The feather?
No,
One
it's
of them
not quite
deals?
a feather, but I've done that too. So I have this wonderful stationery I bought years ago. I love writing stationery. And the post office for a year has been kicking it back, saying to address the unknown address. And I print it out. It's the machines can't read handwriting anymore.
Really?
At least in my post office.
I get mail all the time from people where they write it on the letter.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe it's just my post office.
You got a fucked up post office. That might be a California thing. That might
Really?
be
Or you
Santa
think? Are
Monica.
you saying that California's fucked up?
It's fucked up.
Yeah.
That's why I moved.
Okay, so look, talk about
Prosperity,
prosperity. Okay, so you make a couple of bucks,
right?
right? You say your wife, wife, honey, you don't have to clean up anymore, and I'm not going to. So let's get a housekeeper. So you get a
Right.
housekeeper. You get richer, right? You say, oh, I'm gonna need 2 housekeepers, right?
Okay.
Okay, we have some kids. Oops, got richer. Nanny for the kids. Boom. Oops, you know what? Love having the nanny. Weekend nanny. Oop, oop, now we need a household manager because we got so rich. We need a household manager and we need a gardener. Oops, now we need a security team.
Sounds like you got business going on.
Dude, so we're doing it very well. So now, oops, now we need a financial manager. Oops, now we need and on we go until they're living your life for you and you're in this little pinnacle, right? Where you're like, you don't go out of the house. When's the last time you filled up your, this is not bad. This is the way
When's
human
last time what?
you mowed your lawn, filled up your car, filled out your own income tax, etc. Cleaned up your front yard.
But isn't the idea of prosperity that you don't do all those things so you can do the things you enjoy?
Exactly so.
Get somebody else to do all those
Of
things?
course, why not? So, but you're doing the things that you enjoy, but you're less and less involved with the day-to-day life of your community. In my community, for example, even before COVID, if you said good morning to your neighbors, they called the cops. Nobody talked to each other.
You should move to Texas. My
I'd
neighbors
love
are
to
super
move.
friendly.
I would love to move to.
Talk to your wife.
Yeah, you talk to my
I'll
wife.
talk to you. Get your wife to talk
Yeah,
to my
please,
wife.
I'll put her on her. Hold on.
Listen,
Put her on her thing.
they're so friendly out here.
I know,
It
it's-
changed my idea of what neighbors are. It really did.
Oh, it's marvelous.
People are so friendly out here. It's like I have friends that came out here and they initially thought that they were being put on. Like, come on, these people aren't real. They're not really that nice. Like everywhere, at fucking grocery stores, at drug stores, like everywhere you go, people are friendly.
Yeah, you know,
different.
I much prefer "Hi, hon, what's yours" to "Put your mask on."
Well, they tell you to put your mask on.
Yo.
They were, but that was just mandate. Citywide, you know.
You're so easygoing.
I'm an easygoing guy.
Yeah, golly gumdrops. And
I came here right from the gym too.
oh,
I'm relaxed.
that'll do it. Well, I'm a hothead, which I'd be the second to tell you. My wife would be the first. Oh, I'm the only guy who ever got barred from Williams Sonoma.
Did you really?
Yeah,
How do you get barred from that place?
I'll tell you.
It's filled with jam and nice
I know,
kitchenware.
it's so wonderful. So I park at Williams Sonoma, and I come in through the back door, the parking lot. And this woman says, "Excuse me, sir, did you not see that sign that says this is not an entrance, it's an exit? You came in through the wrong side." I said, "It's okay, I'm an illegal immigrant." She says, "I find that very, very offensive. Would you please leave?"
So because you joked around and said it's okay, I'm an illegal immigrant, she wanted you to leave?
Yeah, she
And
found
she's
it-
just an employee there?
yeah, but she, you know, all the other people were with her. I don't
They
know.
all were saying you gotta leave?
No, they were all nodding like, you know, the little dog in the back of the station wagon. But I thought, well, it's A, it's a joke, and B, the reason I think it's funny is it's true, right? We're sending up something that we're all concerned about. When you can't send up something that you're all concerned about, what are you joking about? Where's the humor anymore? The only funny thing anybody said for 2 years was Chris Rock. He says, "I'm glad I didn't insult Alec Baldwin's wife." Right? Where was the humor of the last 2 years? Everybody's afraid to joke because humor is all about repression.
Well, that sounds like the Williams Sonoma thing sounds like you just caught the wrong person at the wrong time and you had the wrong joke and
I
she didn't
know.
like it.
But it's a good story.
It's a decent story.
A decent story.
I
you're
wouldn't say, I'm not going to repeat it.
right. Okay.
It's not so good that I'll be telling my friends, you're not going to, David Mamet was on my podcast. I want to tell you his story.
Yeah, really.
It's not that.
You're right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They
course
kicked
I
you out of Williams. Did they bar you? Did you try to come back the next day with a
No,
different
but
outfit?
I kind of barred myself. I didn't want to go back there and take it again.
So she's just upset that you came in the wrong door?
No,
That was it?
she was upset. She was upset. She said she found the comment
Wow.
deeply offensive.
That you're an illegal immigrant? Yeah. That subject is so strange. The subject is it's such a strange subject because some people think that it should be okay to be an illegal immigrant. I'm like, well, you know, the country's founded on immigration. You know, my grandparents were immigrants. My entire family line came from Europe. My grandparents came from Italy, and one of my grandfathers came from Ireland.
Yeah,
No
my
one-
grandparents are immigrants too.
No one came from America.
Yeah.
I am third generation. So it's the whole idea of immigration is like, of course, immigration's great. It's what America's all about. But there's rules. Then the question becomes, is it fair? Are the rules fair? And I don't know if they are. I don't know. I mean, it seems pretty fucking hard if you're from Mexico to get into America legally. Like, it seems hard. It seems difficult.
Well, let me ask you a question. Fair to whom?
Well, fair to the people that are trying to get in comparison to the people that are already here. Like, if you talk to my grandparents, they're dead now, but if you talk to them while they're alive and ask them how hard it was to get into America, all they had to do was show up. They showed up, they wrote their names down. A lot of times they changed their names, like a lot of Italian names that were too hard to pronounce. They changed them, and they were in. And then they founded this country. It's one of the things that made it so fantastic. So you have a legitimate melting pot in the 20th century with all these people coming from all over the world trying to seek a better life and risk takers, right? People that are willing to try out a new continent, get on a boat with their family.
Yeah.
And when my grandfather came over here, he was a young boy. And to be able to do that and to establish, you know, the lineage that, you know, he has left behind in this country, pretty fucking cool. It's the coolest country in that regard, is that we're all immigrants. Everybody here. There's no, like, you know, if you go to China, generally speaking, Chinese people look Chinese. They, you know, that's just they're from China. You're dealing with thousands of years of genetics and the same people living in the same area and a billion of them now. And America's everybody. America's people from Africa, from Ireland, Scotland, and Mexico, and but it's fucking hard to get in now if you're a poor person from another country that wants a better life. You have to show that you have something that we don't. You have to show that you have some sort of a special skill.
Not if you're coming through the southern border.
Right.
So
But even
how
then,
does, how does
still
that make
illegal.
sense then?
It doesn't make sense. But it's what is that?
What is what?
What is that allowing people to come in through the southern border? Do you think that what's going on, and this is what the argument that I've heard, is two things that happen. One, like in New York City, the mayor, I believe Eric Adams said that he believes that illegal immigrants should be allowed to vote, which is fascinating. It's a fascinating thing to say because as soon as you say that, and then you're also letting people in, they know that the people that are allowing them to vote are people in the Democratic Party. So you're basically allowing people to come in because those are the people that are interested in allowing people to come in illegally, right? Those are the ones that don't fight it. And then once they're in, you want them to be able to vote. So you're essentially saying, hey, we got you in. You know who to vote for because we're the people that let you in.
Well,
And you've got a built-in, like you've got it's a beautiful thing in their eyes because you've got this built-in voter base now,
well,
and you're allowing them to come in.
duh, right?
Right?
Duh. So, anybody says that the border should be open, try coming in, flying from Heathrow to JFK and walking in. You can't do it. So the question is, why do the Democrats want the illegal immigrants? It's because they're harvesting votes. Because they're buying votes. This doesn't mean that they're more evil than the rest.
Okay, this is way too easy.
It means, I grew up in Mayor Daley, south side of
I'm
Chicago.
gonna
It's
do
all
it.
about
That's
buying votes.
literally I can do that.
Place. And if you want a job, turn out.
Yeah, that one's too easy. We're going somewhere
You
else.
want to stay on the police force kickback 2 weeks of your pay and shut the fuck up.
Right, but you don't think Democrats want everybody to be on welfare, right?
I think that the Democratic Party wants everybody to be on welfare. The Democratic Party has gotten so far away from it, not only but from its constituents.
What do you base that on, though? That statement that they want everybody to be on welfare.
Because the welfare people, the people on welfare, the people who vote for the Democratic Party. Because somebody said a long time ago, they said a democracy dies when the people realize they can vote for the government to give them money. So if the people can vote for the government to give them money, they're going to do so. So the question is, who is paying for the welfare? It's not the Democratic Party. It's the taxpayers.
Do you believe in any sort of a social safety net for
Of
people?
course I do.
So you believe in welfare?
No, well, no,
You
no.
don't?
Well, no, wait a second. I believe in some sort of the social. Listen, Social Security started out as an interim program to deal with the elderly who didn't have any savings during the Depression. So now we have all of this money paid into Social Security. It's not there anymore. It's all been spent. So the only way the Social Security can function is to endanger the future. Unemployment insurance existed at the beginning to help somebody who lost their job in the period before they got the next job. So now it exists to keep somebody on unemployment insurance for 2 years so they don't work. If I was a kid and that's all that I knew, I'd do it too. The aid to dependent children started to help mothers who didn't have babies, who didn't have a wage earner around, that they were young, they were single mothers, they didn't have a wage earner around. So then it became evident two things, that the more children you had out of wedlock with no man in the house, the more money you got. And the only way you could keep on getting that money was if the man was out of the house. So the men left. Now, this is not specific to the black community, but it's endemic. The same thing happened in the Jewish community. When my grandparents' generation came over in the 20s, about a third of the men just left, including my grandfather. Just couldn't take it anymore. They couldn't take the shock of immigration, the new language. They just left. Dr. King had been alive today, he would have come around to the opposite view. And I thought, what? You know, if Hitler had been alive today, he might have become a rabbi.
What opposite view?
The opposite view that
You should be judged by the color of your skin, not the content of your character.
That color
Who the
blindness
fuck are you talking to?
Exactly.
Who is this person?
Well, he's a liberal. They believe that color blindness is racism. A lot of them do. Leftists, not the liberals.
Oh, you mean color blindness is an I don't see race.
Yeah,
so that equals
yeah,
racism.
that we have to see the person's race so we know how to treat them.
Yeah.
So it is the foundation of this the country, the idea of free speech. And I learned something really great from a rabbi about the way debate should be carried on, which is so helpful. He said, when you're debating with someone, first adduce the facts, right? Adduce the facts. Say, you think this, I think that. If we disagree, take it off the table. Just adduce the facts upon which we can agree.
Okay.
So now we already have a little bit of agreement, right?
Right.
You say January the 6th was a peaceful demonstration of blah, blah. I say it was a riot. Okay, take it off the table. What can we agree upon?
Okay.
Right? Now, let's reason from those facts to what our position is. You say your position is X, I say my position is Y. You say that your position is welfare must be increased, I say it should be decreased.
I don't think it should be increased.
No.
I just think it's necessary.
No, I beg your pardon, I misspoke. I didn't mean to say that you said that. I mean, just as an
okay.
example.
I said an example.
So now we start with these facts, and now we have these ideas toward which we're progressing. So now we say, okay, good, I get it where you're going, I get it where I'm going. Let's take these facts upon which we did agree and see if that leads to your conclusion or it leads to my conclusion, right? Because we already started out with agreement.
Right.
Let's use the power of reason. And I was talking to some other liberals a couple of years ago. He said, obviously the Constitution's outmoded, 230 years old, it's outmoded. I said, oh yeah, that's what, like the Ten Commandments are outmoded? He says, no, it just doesn't work anymore. I said, what should we replace it with? He said, well, I said, okay, I got a better question. What are the rules by which we should determine what we replace it with? Because that's the bigger question.
Right.
You say the Constitution is the law of the land. It's close to magnificent holy writ and how it deals with human nature. I see it's a terrible constrictive document, right? If we don't have any rules, where is this going to end up? Well, you remember the Civil War?
I do remember this.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. If there are no rules of debate, all that we're left with is thuggery.
So do you think the people that are saying we should revamp the Constitution, they believe the Constitution offers protection for things that they feel are questionable and need to be eradicated from society?
I don't know what the hell they think. I don't think they've read the Constitution. I mean, it'll take them about 10 minutes. You read the Constitution.
Yeah.
I don't know what there is to object about.
Well, I think, again, during the Trump administration, I think there was a lot of people that felt like we have to stop this from ever happening again.
To stop what?
A guy like him from ever getting to a position of power, because the way he communicates is so aggressive and bombastic and so contrary to what we think of when we think of a statesman, when we think of a leader of the free world. We don't want that kind of person in power who insults people and says rude things and talks about himself in a very braggadocious manner, and that this is negative, and that he has this horde of followers that will just believe anything he says and start cheering for him at these rallies, and we don't like it. We people start comparing him to other dictators.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. He was terrible. I think we're much better off under Joe Biden.
Yeah, I like a president that doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah. You know, the one thing about Joe Biden is people say, you know, Joe Biden, Trump, I didn't like his tweets. Oh, that's a good idea. We're much better off with $10 a gallon gas. We didn't like his fucking tweets. That's a shame. Grow up.
Were you always a conservative?
No, I was a red diaper baby liberal.
When did you become a conservative?
I think, you know, I grew up, my dad, they were all involved. My dad was a labor lawyer, and I knew my friends of mine, their parents were involved with Saul Alinsky, and and I grew up, and Jesse Jackson was in my neighborhood and all that race baiting and blah 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 blah. So I grew up in the turbulent '60s, and I grew up in the theater. So I didn't know a conservative, and so I grew up with people saying, "Oh, Barry Goldwater, you may remember." Barry Goldwater's a wonderful man. Loved Arizona. There's a committed outdoorsman. He didn't want to be a politician, but he was. And he said of the Vietnam War, this is a combat pilot. He understood war. He said, bomb them back to the Stone Age or get out tomorrow. Meaning, get out tomorrow if you aren't prepared to fight a war. For God's sake, stop killing people. Get out. We had 400 psychiatrists who wrote into the New York Times and signed a letter saying he's a psychotic. So that was Barry Goldwater. Where William Buckley, they said he's a psychotic. He's the John Birch Society. Ronald Reagan, he's a jumped up actor, blah, blah, blah. So then I wrote a book. I wrote a book about this. I do a lot of thinking about my wonderful poor people, the Jews. And I wrote a book called The Wicked Son, called Judaism, Self-Loathing, and Anti-Semitism. And I wrote this book, and I thought it was a fairly straightforward understanding of what was going on with the Jews. And another writer read a manuscript, and she said, "Oh my God, wait till you see what the left is going to do to you." And I said, "Well, like Sarah Silverman," I said, "What do you mean the left is going to do me? I am the left, right? I'm a congenital Democrat. I am the left. There's nothing objectionable in here." So then the thing started to fray. And then I wrote a political play, and the New York Times came. It was a comedy. It's pretty fucking funny. I wrote a political play, and the New York Times said, "Oops, guess what? He's now a conservative." Then I wrote an article for the Village Voice.
What was the premise of the political play that they decided to label you a conservative?
Well, it wasn't the play so much. Okay, the political play there with Nathan Lane on Broadway is hysterically funny. It's about a president who's the worst president of all time, and he's getting voted out of office, and he's got like 2 weeks to earn enough money to jack up his campaign. No one's going to give him any money because they say his numbers are lower than Gandhi's cholesterol. So it's about to be Thanksgiving. And every Thanksgiving the president pardons 2 turkeys. Right? They put him on national television and they walk through Disneyland. It's a big thing. I pardoned the turkey. So the president gets this idea. He says, "I want the head of the National Association of Turkey Manufacturers in my office in an hour." So the turkey guy shows up, and the president says, "I want $300 million. I'm going to pardon every fucking turkey in the United States of America." So it's all about him shaking down the turkey administration. It's hysterically funny. So I wrote a article for the Village Voice about political debate. And I said, we're in the midst of having some unfortunately heated political debates. Why can't we debate with political civility? It was called political civility. I said, for example, I used to refer to myself, I've always referred to myself as a brain-dead liberal. I said, this is not even being civil to myself. Wonderful, reasoned article. Village Voice comes out on Monday. The whole front page, Why I Am No Longer a Brain-Dead Liberal, by David Mamet.
Wow.
Yeah, so after that, zoop, I was a non-person to the left. All of a sudden, I said, golly, gumdrops, guys.
And you didn't have a platform where you can immediately refute this. And did you have social media at the time?
No,
or
it was
anything?
I think it was before movable type. It was a long time ago.
What year was this?
Yeah,
When this happened?
Maybe 24 years, 25 years ago.
Oh, okay, so in the 90s. So you're talking
But also,
about like late
you
90s.
know, there is no refuting.
There's no refuting to the people that don't believe, but there is. You can express yourself in a way that reasonable people can see your point and they get it.
Yes, but see, the only people that I knew to communicate with were my supposed friends on NPR and the New Yorker and the New York Magazine.
Right.
But they lost my number from the Rolodex.
As soon as this all happened.
Yeah, kaboom, just like
One
that.
Village Voice article. That's amazing. And one play.
No, there was
that
nothing wrong
seemed
with
to
the
be-
play. The play was a hysterically funny play.
But that it seemed to be, like, at least enhancing right-wing arguments.
No, it had
No?
nothing to do with the play. It had to do with the article that the Village Voice said, because they never liked, listen, it's great fun to burst on the scene, right? 2 guys have had that experience, but you can't burst on the scene forever.
Right.
At one point, it's no longer news that you've burst on the scene. So
Right.
what's the news? Oh, we got to find something else.
Got it.
Maybe he likes having sex with dogs, or maybe this, or maybe that.
So this one article, though, you were still identifying as a liberal at
Yes.
the time. So what changed for you?
Well, they wouldn't have me. So then I said, wait a second, I got to figure
But
this out.
who is they though?
The people, see, I've always made my living with the connivance or the oversight or the ignorance of the press. Here's a perfect example.
You mean by reviews? And
Of course,
things like
yeah,
that,
because
and
when you're a
articles and
playwright,
interviews? Yeah.
it was before the internet. If you're a playwright, you got to go to New York. You got a good review from.
Right, they had a stranglehold on it back then because it was
Yeah.
all about the reviews, and it was not about. There was no social media word of mouth like Rotten Tomatoes type deal where you
Nothing.
have today.
Not that
That's
long
sort of
ago.
it. The Rotten Tomatoes things is really fascinating to me because it's shown the difference in the very clear difference between the way critics look at things, where a lot of them are sort of ideologically captured, like very overwhelmingly left wing, versus the way the audience looks at things.
That's right.
You know, like my friend Dave Chappelle's special, Sticks and Stones, when
Yeah.
that came out, that was one of them where they showed the difference between Rotten Tomatoes' version of it and the Rotten Tomatoes where the critics had looked at it and gave it like 4% or something like that. And then the most recent one, The Closer, is the best one. Because it's like when it first came out, I think it was like something crazy, like it's insanely low Rotten Tomato score by the critics, but insanely high Rotten Tomato score by the general public.
Yeah, but see, the critics have always been, I've dealt with them for 50 years, like the woman behind the counter at the auto registry. Right?
Yeah.
They're trying to do a job, but you better not fucking piss them off, right? Or you ain't going to get that license. And
Right.
if they're in a bad mood or had a bad lunch or had a fight with the husband or wife,
They come
or if,
after you.
yeah, they'll ruin you.
It's kind of a tyranny.
Of course, it's tyranny. It's tyranny
Yeah.
of tyranny of the weak. And they used to say, what is the one requirement that you need in order to be a drama critic? Insufficient talent to write sports.
Or insufficient talent to write, for sure. They don't start out wanting to be a critic.
Yeah,
Generally speaking, they want to be a writer. They just didn't have
Of
the talent
course.
for it. Yeah.
And so what do? They have the capacity to fuck things up. And there were two guys when I was very active in New York theater that were John Simon and Frank Rich, who were the theater critics for respectively New York Magazine and the New York Times. And they would come to the openings, every opening, and they would go down to the bottom of the aisle right by the curtain before the show, and they would turn around. And they would look out at the audience and gossip. So they were in effect saying, well, guess who the show is tonight, folks? It's us too. So I wrote an article that said, John Simon and Frank Rich are the gonorrhea and syphilis of American theater.
How'd that go over?
It was great. But then John Simon died, rest in peace, 6 months ago. And somebody called me up to said, would you give me a comment? So I always try to think something of my wife, because my wife says, that's a great idea. Please don't do it. We have to live here in this country. So I thought, so this guy said, what do you think about the fact of John Simon's death? And I didn't say, unfortunately. He's finally done something for the American theater. Yeah.
So this Village Voice article comes out. You get excommunicadoed by the left,
Yeah.
if that's a verb. And then from there, you decide, I'm going to join the right? Like,
No, I didn't know there was a right. I didn't listen. I'd never met a conservative in my life. And
Really?
Knowingly, no. I mean, where am I going to meet them? A Chicago Jew went to a hippy-dippy college and grew up in the theater? Forget about it.
So what is the but why didn't you just this is what I don't understand. You had these principles, these ideas, you're this left-wing person, one bad article comes out about you, and you're a non-persona by the left.
Yeah.
But don't you still have the same core beliefs and ideas that led you to be a left-wing person in the first place?
I did, but I had to re-examine them.
So how does that process work?
I'll tell you. So I was going to a nice synagogue at the time, and there was a fellow there who was a conservative, and I'd never met a conservative before, ever. And so we talked a little bit, not too much about politics, and I was so impressed by his demeanor. He wasn't angry, and he was, the old joke is, what do you call a happy black man? A conservative, right? He wasn't angry, and he wasn't arrogant. And he could listen to me, and we talked. And I was really impressed by his attitude. And he said, "You want to read some books?" I said, "Sure." He said, I'm gonna bring you a couple books," and he brought me "The Road to Serfdom" by Friedrich Hayek and "Capitalism and Freedom" by Milton Friedman. Real simple, straightforward books. And I say, "Thank you so much, but of course I'll have to hide them when my friends come by." And he said, "I don't." And I thought, "Dave, listen to yourself. You said there's a guy whom you admire greatly as a good human being. You asked him to give you some books. He gave you the books, and you said you had to hide them from your friends. You're nuts, Dave. You're nuts. A, and B, are those really your friends?" So I had to start reading, and I read everything I could get my hands on. And I wrote a book about 20 years ago called The Secret Knowledge, which is the beginning of this change.
So that started it off.
Yeah.
And so you read these books, the Milton Friedman book. Like, what book was most influential in getting you to shift your ideas?
That's a very good question. I think it was probably Capitalism and Freedom, but and I would start arguing because I was going nuts, right? I said, "I just don't get it." Arguing with my friends, "What about this? What about that?"
Going nuts? How so?
Because I was exposed to the difference between what I thought, and what I really thought. Because I realized that a lot of things I thought, I wasn't operating in that way. You know, I might have said that wealth is bad, but I wanted more. Right? I knew that there was a lot of prejudice against Jews, and I knew there was a lot of prejudice against black. But the question was, what's the responsibility of a human being in this situation? Was it to give more money to, quote, social programs? Right?
Well, what was the right-wing alternative to that? What was the argument against
The
it?
right-wing alternative to that was charter schools. Charter schools. You know, Shelby said, my good friend Shelby, and I started reading Shelby's works, and Shelby said, if we did away with welfare, the trauma in the inner cities would stop tomorrow.
How so?
Well, in his words, and I got to agree with him, he's a black guy, I'm not, because people would say, wait a second, we're all in the same boat, let's work for a living. And then the same thing that I went through and you went through. Unless we say that somehow, look, there's two groups in the United States that have always, one group for 150 years, another group for 60 years, have been under government control by accepting government largesse. And from having worked a long time with kids, especially young men, it's real easy to warp them, right? If you take, like I know a lot of young men of my son's age who went to these colleges, and they get out and their parents say, well, I got to give them a little bit of money. And it's extraordinary how little money it takes to warp a young man. Whether that young man has just gotten out with a degree in philology from Dartmouth, or the young man has just joined a gang on the streets, the same thing. It's a hard transition to become a man. It's probably a hard transition to become a woman, I wouldn't know. But it's a hard transition, and young men, I did, and probably you did too, looked at the gap. They said, geez, you know, I'm young. I'm not very strong. I don't know how I'm going to get a job. I don't know how I'm going to get a wife. I don't know how I'm going to get a car. I don't get it. I can't make that transition. But you make it little by little. But if someone says, you know, son, you got out of Dartmouth, here's $1,000 a week. Have a good time till you find yourself. You're never going to get off of that tit, ever.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that does seem to be a problem with wealthy people, with their kids.
What's the problem with everybody? That people who don't work for what they get.
Right. If you get free money, it does seem to be a problem. But how does this? But still, like, that's just one aspect of conservative thinking. You actually identify as like a right-wing person now.
I don't know. You know, I can't even say Republican, because the Republicans were the people when I was a kid who wore white pants and white white shoes and lived at the.
So what do you identify as? Conservative?
I guess I do. I find all of the things so difficult to get my mouth around.
Libertarian?
No, not a libertarian. Like somebody said I'm an independent. He said, you know what an independent is? I say, yeah, it's a Democrat with a speech defect. So I got a speech defect about saying Republican and blah blah blah. But I'm certainly an American. I love it here.
So what do you think of yourself as? Do you think of yourself as right wing?
No, I don't think of myself. I suppose I think of myself as a conservative.
Conservative.
Because I like to conserve. Just as my own life has reached a stage where I'd love to be able to go on and enjoy some of the fruits of and engage in some contemplation, I would like the life of my beloved country to continue in maturity, which it can't do it as it could in adolescence, in maturity as an honorable, decent place to live with liberty and justice for all.
But don't you think a lot of people on the left share that idea?
I don't know.
You don't know, but it used to be you.
Well, exactly so. But a lot of conservatives today would have been Kennedy liberals then.
Because just the political landscape has shifted so much.
Yes, as it always does.
Yeah. So let's go back to the late '90s. So this horrible article comes out about you. You become a non-persona to a lot of left-wing people, but.
Yeah.
You continue to work in Hollywood. You continue to make films and write scripts. And
right.
Like, is it a friction? Is it an issue?
Well, to a certain extent, you don't. That's a good question. The answer is you don't know. To a large extent, you don't know. For example, if in Hollywood, I wrote my first movie, I think 1979, and the guy who gave me notes on the movie was a guy called Samson Rafelson. Samson Rafelson is famous because he wrote the first talking picture. That's how close I am to the beginning of Hollywood.
Yeah.
So I got to so I got to enjoy like 40 years of the great adventure of the movie business. But the movies that I made aren't getting made anymore.
What kind of movies?
Well, independent films, right? Like when I made a bunch. I wrote 30 films for hire, and I directed like 12 films, and which I also wrote. But in those days, there was still a little bit of independence. So somebody said, okay, you know what, kid? I like the script. What's it going to cost? $4 million. Okay, good. Here's $4 million. Go make the movie and I'll sell it to blah, blah. So that was independent film. That doesn't exist. That doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't?
No, not that I know of. Because not only did that die, the movies are dead. They're dead. The whole idea of movies was, I'm going to get my best gal and my best boy and and we're going to go out on a Friday, Saturday night. We're going to sit in the dark. We're going to eat popcorn. And there's the people that are 20 feet high. They're like gods. We're going to have the best possible time.
Right.
And if I don't like that movie, I'll see another movie, blah, blah, blah. But now the movies are being played on this, right? And the movies have become so corporate, just like Twitter, that all the decisions, they aren't being made by some, the people I grew up with, ancient Jews like me smoking a cigar. I said, yeah, it seems like a good idea, go make it. They're being made by 30 people sitting around a board table, playing silly buggers and pig Latin with each other's pronouns, right? I get it. Things mature and things die. Who would have thought that Kodak would go out of business?
Right.
They had this magnificent hegemony. They made this little product that cost them nothing. And the more people used it, the more they had to use it. So who at Kodak would say 15 years ago, guys, we have to stop. There's this other thing now.
But they are still making some movies. Like, is it less? Like, is it overall like a lowered production of films? Is it?
No. The problem is always in who holds the high ground, right? Who holds the passes, controls the commerce.
Right.
Who owns the railroads controls the commerce. Then who owns the blah blah blah? Who owns Twitter controls the commerce.
So it's the suits at these movie
Sure,
studios.
they own the high ground. So when I was starting out in the theater, had a blessing. I started out in a garage, with William H. Macy and Joe Mantegna and Dennis Franz and Billy Peterson. People who became John Malkovich. The people who became huge stars. We just were working in a garage because we could, and then we eventually moved to Broadway and got some credibility because we could. But if you can only start off by entering at the corporate level, what are you going to do? For example, the people who made the chop shops in Southern California, right? They took cars and they said, wow, this would be a good idea. Let's take the Blazer and cut the roof off. I tell you what, let's take this Jeep and raise the fenders. Let's take blah, blah, blah. Those were guys in a garage, just like me and John Malkovich were in the garage, and all those ideas got adopted by GM, right? Where they looked at this marvelous invention and said, well, that's a good idea. I'll do that. And so last year, Ford bought out another Bronco. But if you take a degree in automotive design and get hired by Ford, you're going to be designing taillights for 10 years, right? So where's the individual initiative? It's not going to exist, as Milton Friedman says, until you give the people with inspiration a reason to reveal it. It's kind of a brilliant thing.
So what's
to
the
say.
bottleneck? Is the bottleneck financial? Is it just too expensive to make films so that they try to make a film that's only going to be financially viable? They don't take any creative choices or chances?
Who wants to make a film that's not going to be financial? Nobody ever did. Sometimes the film was so expensive it didn't matter anymore. The bottleneck is the corporation which controls the high ground, the method of distribution. That's the bottleneck. And okay, over 100 years, vaudeville died, and then there was radio, and then radio died, and there was television, and then the movies, and then television. Then the television drove out the movies. The movies are dead, and television becomes streaming. So the method of distribution, I hate to sound like a Marxist, is determining the content, right?
Okay.
So you say, okay, I want to, rather than saying, honey, let's go out and see if there's anything with Clint Eastwood in it. You say, no, I bought a subscription, right? What's on my subscription series? What can I get on Netflix, right? So they're turning out sausages. Of course they are. But the movies were turning out sausages too, to the largest extent. I just had a good time making them.
So I'm still trying to figure out, what's this leap that you're making to being like this hardcore conservative or whatever you are?
Well, leap is,
whatever I don't. Hardcore conservative is wrong.
The leap is I have to be able to understand.
So your business doesn't exist in the way that it existed when you were coming up and making your great films.
For me.
For you.
Yeah, because the other thing is I was 22 years old. I don't want to work with grandpa.
Right.
I get it. Right, the young people have a chance to have their day. The technology changed. Doesn't do any good. I could to be the greatest designer of passenger trains in the world.
But they are still making independent films, right?
Yeah, there are a bunch of independent films.
So how do they get made?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Listen, Herman Melville, right, wrote the thing about the big fish. He wrote a book about a big fish, Moby Dick. You remember him?
Yes.
So he says the first thing he says in the book is there's no different. He says the greatest disparity in the world is between the people who are looking for work and the people who are looking for help, right? So the people looking for help will always say, Jesus Christ, I can't get good help. And the people looking for work says, I can't get a job. There's always a disparity. So it's the old joke has, there's two Jews, right? Remember the Jews?
Yes.
One of them says, did you get the job working for ABC Radio? The job you went over for ABC Radio? Did you get the job? The other guy says, no. They don't like Jews.
That's a funny joke. You're still. I see that the business model shifted. I see that things have changed, but I'm still trying to find out your journey to the point where you're writing this book.
Well, my journey was...
You're slowly educating yourself to these different ideas, and those ideas resonate with you more than the ideas you had previously accepted, maybe because you hadn't examined those?
Well, the idea is, the boy. You ever a Boy Scout as a Boy Scout?
Yeah, I was a Boy Scout.
Okay, so the old Boy Scout test is: can I walk away from the fire? Is it out sufficiently that I can walk away from it? And the Boy Scout test was pick up the ashes, right? You don't have to worry about it.
Right.
If you
If
can
you can
pick
hold
them
them
up,
in your hand.
it's out.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate having written plays for a million years, because when you're writing a play, you're constantly saying, I don't get it. I don't get it. I know this scene works, and I know that scene works, but there's something missing in between. I just don't understand. So writing a play is really a process, an analysis. Happens to be analysis of your imagination, but nonetheless, it's an analysis. Is there one thing too many? Is there one thing too few? Did I misunderstand what the play, who the protagonist is? I got to keep at it till I understand. So I was looking at this whole idea of conservatism, and I read everything I could get my hands on. I said, I got to understand. I got to understand. So I was just furious at myself, and probably those around me, all the time say, I don't understand, because what these guys are saying makes sense, but it's contrary to everything I've been taught. Let me see if I can find the error. So I just kept reading and reading and writing and trying to find the error. And I couldn't. So I said, oh, okay, I get it. Now I got a different problem, right? Which is the world that I thought was congenial to me has just kicked me out. It's just Sarah Silverman's problem. What does that indicate? I wouldn't want to kick them out. Why do you want to kick me out? I say, I get it. Okay, I get it. This is one of the, look at, 2 years before I was born, they were throwing Jewish babies into ovens because they thought that was a good idea at the time, right? The civilization splits into two camps and fights World War II. Looks like a good idea at the time. People are crazy, and people do individual crazy things and communal crazy things. So the fact that we're undergoing a societal shift here is nothing new. It's in fact inevitable. My question was, what does it mean? A, what does it mean to me? B, and what should I do about it?
It is fascinating that the business of entertainment is almost overwhelmingly dominated by people that follow a left-wing ideology. Almost overwhelmingly.
Yes.
Right? In terms of film, in terms of television, in television it's almost 100%. I mean, it's in the high 90s, other than like Fox News, right? That's probably the only thing on television that you can point to that's clearly conservative is Fox News Channel.
Yeah.
Everything else, like shows and television shows, there's so many left-wing leaning production houses and so many left-wing leaning Democrats that are working as executives and as writers and as producers. It's the whole business.
Yes, indeed.
And for a person who has a differing ideology, you either have to lie or you have to hide it.
Or get out.
Or get out.
Yes, that's right.
If you're a person like, there's very few people that are Republicans or that are right-wing or conservatives that are openly conservative and talk about it openly and talk about politics openly that exist in Hollywood. You get like John Voight, right?
Yeah.
But he's kind of on the way out. You know, he's done a million movies, he's a legend, he's been around forever. He doesn't give a fuck anymore. And he's been, talking about his right-wing ideas for a long time.
Yeah.
But other than him and Clint Eastwood, who the fuck else is there?
Well, there's a few.
A small handful.
Yeah.
And they're kind of grandfathered in. Like Clint's grandfathered in a lot of ways.
Yes.
But if you're a young guy, like right now...
Well, people in Hollywood who are conservatives whisper.
Yeah.
Literally. They come up on the
whisper.
street and they'll say,
Yeah.
I saw you with that thing, the blah, 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 blah. God bless you, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah. And if you had come to the studios with a Trump sticker, your car would have been keyed.
Right.
And
Yeah.
if you put a Trump sticker up in your neighborhood, it would have been destroyed. Maybe your house would have been,
Yeah.
who knows what. Because it's, you know anything about a codependent family?
Sure.
Okay, good. Don't we all?
Yeah.
So in the codependent family, if daddy is stripping little Susie, right? The problem is not in that family if they're codependent, that little Susie is getting sexually abused. The problem is that one must never draw attention to the fact. Because if anyone says, wait a second, daddy is stripping little Susie, the family breaks up. It's all over. So when you're kids, you say, oh my God, this is the thing that has to be, it's the worst thing in the world, that the family would break up. So maybe he's not really blah, blah, little Susie, or maybe she's asking for it, or maybe I'm wrong, but you can't allow the possibility to come out of your mouth. So that's the same thing with the left. They're codependent. They're living a life that doesn't stand up to the test of reason. And it's destructive, but they can't allow any alternative to come to their consciousness, let alone out of their mouth. Because if it comes to the consciousness, they're a hypocrite. Who wants to be a hypocrite? So what they do is they become arrogant, and they say it's not that I'm a hypocrite, it's that you're wrong.
There's also a genuine fear of losing your income, right? There's a genuine
Absolutely.
fear of being kicked out of the community.
Absolutely.
I've experienced that with many friends where they would talk about their ideas that they have that might be, right wing or more conservative, and that they can't talk about it on sets, and they can't talk about
Of course.
it. They hide it.
But there's a lot of strength to be gained from examples. And one example that I took a lot of strength from is gay liberation, because I grew up in a gay business with the theater, right, surrounded by gay people who were all closeted because they had to be in that time, right? And I can't imagine the hell that was,
Right.
because their choice was either to shut up or to come out and perhaps lose your income.
Yeah.
But then something happened, right? It happened with Stonewall. And they said, wait a second, it's not my problem that I'm gay. That's what I am. It's your problem. You have to deal with that. I don't. And so what we saw in this transformation in 50 years is become part of the culture, which is a really good thing about the way the culture has aged in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And another good thing is the way that being black has aged in the last 50 years and among the majoritarian white culture, where they say, wait a second, that I get it. The slavery was bad, blah, blah, blah. Not only has slavery been over, not only has segregation been over, we're going to go too far in the other direction, blah, blah, blah. But there's no more lynching, and there's no more church burnings, right? And there's no more people. Look at it. White actors have a very, very difficult time now because it's hard for them to get hired in the business. But that's unfortunate. But on the other hand, black actors had to put up with it for 100 years. Okay? It's understandable. Is it equality? Maybe yes, maybe no, but it's completely understandable.
White actors have a hard time getting hired now?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
But there's so many of them. See them in so many shows. Maybe that's a problem.
Well, maybe no. If you look at it, I live among actors.
Oversaturated market.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. So, what have you abandoned in sort of becoming a conservative? Like, what ideas have you gotten rid of? Because
That's a great question. Let me think about that. I've gotten rid of the idea that it's the government's job to help people, and it's the government's job to be kind to people.
and that's a core tenet of left-wing ideology, right?
That's
big,
right.
Big government.
Because here's the thing, let me ask you, what happens when you get a letter from a government organization that you didn't expect? What's your first reaction? Just
Call
like,
my lawyer.
what? Of course, everyone is frightened. It's everybody's reaction.
Right.
Anybody who had anything ever to deal with the government went home weeping, right? Because
Right.
the government is of necessity force. That's all that a government is. They have the capacity to force you to do certain things. So what the Constitution says is let's limit that capacity only to force you to do things which promote the general defense, provide for the common welfare, and get the blessings of prosperity for you and your progeny. That the government is good for the post office, the army, the navy, the roads, and the sewers. That's it. It does those things well because everybody, as Milton Friedman said, everybody needs them, but nobody can pay for them. So when the government decides to do something other than that, something that everybody needs and nobody can pay for, right? All that they can do is do something nobody needs, right? Like a train to nowhere or like a diversity department, right? Because the great blessing of capitalism is if people needed it, somebody would supply it. If nobody's supplying it, it means that nobody needs it.
So this was something you had to learn this.
I had to figure it out.
I had to adopt this.
Yes. So what I realized was, and this is Milton Friedman's great contribution. He said when he was tutoring doctoral students for the thesis at the University of Chicago, he said, when you submit your thesis for a doctorate in economics at the University of Chicago, it can't be longer than 500 words. It's kind of brilliant. So what I realized is you got a pad of paper and a pencil and a kitchen table. If it doesn't work at the kitchen table, it's not going to work at the governmental level. There's no magic. What did I earn? What did I spend? Was it a good idea? What should I do next? What do I learn from my mistakes? That's it. That's how we all run our lives. Except when you give the power to the government says, well, I'm doing good for people, so fuck you. I'm going to teach your children about sex. I'm going to teach your children about race. I'm going to have a diversity department. I'm going to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's inevitable because you put people in power, they're going to use it.
So this book, you start writing this book, and this book sort of outlines the way you feel with all the problems that you feel are happening today in the society, with censorship, with the decay, the moral foundation decay of society. Like what is your, like, when you sat out to do this, like why did you put it together in book form? Like what was? Well,
I was doing a lot of writing at the time. I was writing for National Review, writing for Wall Street Journal, writing for Flying Magazine, the Jewish journal, and I wrote a lot of essays, and I started culling them in favor of a book. And the form of the book is really, it's a bunch of anecdotes. Rather than saying, here are my thoughts, I say, well, here's a story, here's a story, and here's what it makes me think of. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you a story, okay?
Sure.
So here's one of the stories in the book. It says, two Jews, right? His name, the Jew's called Shaspersky, and he gets off the boat from Poland, and his brother tells him, I've changed my name to Frederick Stafford. I've changed my name from Shaspersky to Frederick Stafford. So the Polish guy gets off the boat, Shaspersky gets off the boat, and he says, please page Frederick Stafford, paging Frederick Stafford, paging Frederick Stafford. He looks around, he sees his brother standing next to him. He says to the brother, wait a second, I'm paging Frederick Stafford. Why aren't you responding? The guy says, well, I changed my name. It's now Austin Woodford. The guy says, you changed your name from Frederick Stafford to Austin Woodford. Why? The brother says, well, because when it was Frederick Stafford, everyone says, what was it before you changed it? So my question that starts off that essay is, of America, what was it before you changed it?
Not totally sure if I follow you.
It's okay. That's okay. You got some Jews somewhere in your background, I'm sure.
I kind of get it.
Okay.
But so you're writing this book. Like, what was your goal? Like in this book, you just wanted to get your ideas out. You just wanted to
the idea about
express yourself.
Yes. Well, the idea about being an artist, I wrote about this in the book too. It's like being an oyster. Right? People say, oh, what's art good for? It's good for changing people's minds. Well, no, that's why they have firearms, right? Art's not good for that. It's good for expressing myself. Well, that's why they have bores, right? They're good at expressing themselves. The artist creates because he's irritated, just like the oyster. He creates the pearl because he's irritated. He can't use the pearl. Right? Mm-hmm. And other people who aren't an artist might say, oh my God, who aren't an oyster, yes, I see that the pearl, I'd like to make a pearl too. I know, I'll go to film school.
So it was just something you needed to get out. essentially.
That's all I've done all my life.
Yeah.
My whole life. Like, I'm doing this for 50 years. I get up, I go to work every day, and I come home. I spend the day writing, reading, and taking a nap.
You talk about what's happening in this country almost like as if it's a mind disease.
A what disease?
A mind disease.
Well, it is. To a large extent, it is. But when you read the Torah, as I say, I read the Bible every day, read the Torah, the Jews are crazy, right? So it's Jews as, to a largest extent, the progenitors of Western civilization, right? The Abrahamic religions, right? Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all come out of this one tradition. But Moses takes the Jews out of Egypt, and the first thing they do is they say, fuck you. I want to go back. I don't like it here. Weren't there enough graves in Egypt? Why do you bring us out to die in the desert? We have nothing to eat. So Moses says, well, what's your favorite food? They say, quail. So it rains down quail. And they eat the quail till they say the quail comes out of their nose. So then they come back to Moses. They say, we're tired of quail. We're really tired of quail. He says, okay, I'm going to give you this other stuff. It's called manna. It's going to fall, and you gather it up, and it's going to taste like whatever is your favorite food that day. They get tired of manna. So from the moment that Moses takes them out of Egypt, they don't want to leave, until Moses dies, which is the end of the story, they want to kill Moses. They're nuts. The people are fucking nuts. They see Moses part the Red Sea. He takes them out of Egypt. Pharaoh's army gets drowned. God appears in fire on the mountain. Moses says, okay, guys, wait here. I'm going to be back in 40 days. I want to talk to the big fellow. You know who I'm not talking about, right?
Not talking about Biden.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to go up the mountain and talk to the big fellow. He's a half an hour late coming down. And they've torn off all their clothes. And they've made this molten calf. And they're worshiping the molten calf. They just saw God. Moses says, what the fuck? These people are nuts. And throughout the Torah, either he's saying to God, let me get rid of these people and start again. And God says no. Or God said, I tell you what, Moses, you get rid of the people, we'll start again. And Moses says no. But the Torah, the Jewish Bible, is the history of human insanity. That's what it is. And that's why it's a great idea to study it. Because everything you see in the Torah, you're seeing around you and in yourself every day.
Do you think that it's imperative that a society have some kind of structure to follow, whether it's some kind of religion or some kind of ideology? Like, do you think that we need something?
Of course we do, and it's not only an imperative, it's inevitable that a society will form itself. Like, for example, you're in a boat full of people that gets washed up on a desert island. You guys will improvise a society just like that.
Right.
Within a half an hour, who's going to be the food gatherer, who's going to be the wise one, who's going to be the kvetch, who's going to take care of the public event. That's what we do. The problem is when society gets too big, which is inevitable because it's successful, we don't know who these people are. And we forget that we're all just, if I may, stranded on a desert island with each other.
Is there a solution? Is there a way to put, like, where we're at right now? Is this the inevitable downward spiral of this civilization and we're just going to have to watch it circle down the drain? Or is there a way to stop this progression?
Well, that's a good question.
And stabilize it.
That is the question. So the answer is it going down the drain, or are we at a place of... listen, in 1914, the people in England could not have foreseen what was going to happen to them with 6 months. They came back to a world they couldn't foresee. The people in 1939, World War II, they came back to a world they couldn't foresee. And the same thing has happened with the computer, the growth of the computer. This is the hugest upheaval. It's more than any war. It's the hugest upheaval in human history. But it starts with Adam. It's inevitable that if you got enough leisure, I don't know if 5,000 monkeys will write the Shakespeare, but it's inevitable that Alan Turing and Bill Gates will come up with the computer age. So here we are. So the question is, what do we do? What do we do now?
Right.
How
do we stabilize it?
Yeah. Or how do we enjoy it? And the only answer I know is with gratitude, right? Gratitude to God putting us here. The fact that we still have it. Listen, I'm 75. I'm not going to go out and chase girls, right? In addition to being blissfully married, and try to get my name in all the papers and blah, blah, and write 1 million plays and make all of that money, all the stuff I did when I was young. I'm at a different place in my life. And the country's at a different place in its life. But the young people are young, right? And they're going to have to determine how to live in this society. And one of the great things that I see in California is the Hispanic Americans, because they're all religious, they love their family, they love their country, they work hard, and it's inevitable that will once again, the Spanish land grants will become Hispanic.
So there's no real clear path other than gratitude for us to be. I mean, how do you promote gratitude? How do you get people to accept that idea?
I don't get people to do anything. I mean,
but I'm just asking, like,
No,
if
I
there was a
understand.
way. I mean, I feel like every time someone talks about the problems with X, you should also approach it in what's the solution to these problems? Is there a solution?
Oh, okay, so let's go back to religion, for example, right? So the golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right?
Right.
So this comes out of a saying by a Jewish rabbi, old Jewish rabbi, somebody said, you know the Torah? He said, of course. He said, can you stand on one foot and tell me the Torah? He said, yes. He stood on one foot and he said, what's hateful to you, do not do to your neighbors. So the golden rule is a version of this, but golden rule inverts it. The golden rule says it's your job to do good to your neighbor. How do you know what good is? Well, good is what you like. If you think it's good, your neighbor will think it's good. But that's not true, because people have different desires and different understandings.
Right.
The Jewish tradition, I don't know what's good for you, but I know what's bad for me, and I'm not going to do that to you. So that's the solution to a happy life.
Do you have any desire to continue making films?
Sure. I mean, they say, how do you know when you're done making movies, your legs go, right? Because you're on your feet for 18 hours a day. I love making movies, but it takes a lot of energy. And there's two reasons to that I made movies. One is you make a lot of money sometimes you don't make any. And one is because you have a lot of fun. So those are two reasons what I consider making a movie. But if neither one of those apply, I'd rather not.
Are there any films that you thought were going to make a lot of money that didn't?
I thought they were all going to make a lot of money, but they didn't. I did my first movie. It was called House of Games. I think it was 1985.
Love that.
Thank you. And Siskel and Ebert were the guys. They were,
Yeah.
and I knew them both from Chicago. And they said it's the year's best film. I thought, my God, the year's best film. My God. But I did it for like $3 million. And the downside of independent films in those days is if somebody paid $3 million for the movie, they pre-sold it. They said, I know I got this cast and this blah, blah, blah. I pre-sold it. I don't give a shit if the movie makes $1. But what I'm not going to do is risk money promoting it. Because I'm out.
Right.
If it makes $3 million and $10, I'm great. If it makes $4 million, I just made 33%.
If they
of my-
spend $1 million promoting it, they
Yeah.
might not make any money.
That's
So
right.
that was the case with that film?
Yeah.
It was too bad. That was a great movie.
Yeah, well, I made a lot of movies. And I said to the one guy, I almost remember his name. It was Orion Pictures. He says, you understand the way we make movies? I say, yeah. I said, you get everything and I get nothing. And he said that's such a unfortunate, cynical way of looking at it. The truth is, you get nothing now, but we get everything later. Isn't that great?
Did Glenn Ross make money?
I think that made a lot of money. I didn't direct. There's a wonderful movie directed by Jamie Foley, but I think that I did a bunch of movies that made a bunch of money that I wrote. Wag the Dog.
Wag the Dog was fantastic.
The
Wag the Dog
Untouchables.
is, it's eerily, applicable when you look at modern day propaganda and you go back to that film, right?
Yeah.
That film was preposterous.
Yeah.
It was great, but people are like, oh, this could never happen. But you think about it today, you go, Jesus Christ, that 100% could happen.
Oh yeah. Well, who was it who started the? I can't remember my first. The hottest thing about Wag the Dog is that Barry Levinson called me up one day. I lived in Vermont, And he says, I got this novel about this guy. The president has to start a war a phony war to divert attention from some mischance. He said, you want me to send it to you? I said, no, I get it. I said, he has to start a war because he's caught in the closet with a Girl Scout. Barry says, yeah, go write it. Well, 5 weeks later, they're shooting a movie. That was our discussion. They're shooting a movie. So the movie comes out, and as the movie comes out, the Monica Lewinsky scandal breaks.
Yes.
So I'm in New York promoting something or other, and for the one time only, thank God, time in my life, I was stalked by the press all week. I couldn't leave the hotel because they all wanted to say blah, blah, blah. But
right.
One of the reasons was there's a scene in the movie where the president, I guess, is talking to somebody who looks exactly like Monica Lewinsky. As you go back, and she looks like Monica, she's got the same outfit. So
wow.
I called up Barry and said, what the fuck? He says, it beats me. I don't know.
Total coincidence.
Yeah.
Wow. And in real life, who did Clinton bomb during the middle of that to divert attention? There was a bomb.
Oh yeah.
Was it literally right out of your movie?
It was an aspirin factory somewhere in Syria or somewhere.
Something crazy like that. And
Yeah.
it was everybody was cynical about it.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, he's doing that to distract attention from the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Say, hey, listen, we had to bomb some people. Let's not talk about this nonsense.
Really?
And let's talk about something serious, like this military action that was absolutely necessary and had nothing to do with distracting people from the fact that I was having sex with an intern.
Well, I knew Patty Chayefsky pretty well, and I think one of the only guys I ever envied as a writer. I envied people who made more money than me, certainly, but I never envied their writing. But I envied Patty that created, among other things, the phrase, I'm mad as hell and I'm just not going to take it. Network.
Yeah.
But then I created that phrase, wag the dog, so I felt very rewarded.
I mean, that phrase gets repeated all the time when people are talking about propaganda or things that they don't believe in.
Well, the other thing, there was somebody, I think it might have been Iraq or Iran, that was saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. That's the Chicago way, which is I made that up for Untouchables.
Really?
Yeah.
You made that expression?
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild. I thought that was just an expression. That's another great film. Man, you had so many good ones. I mean, when you look back at your career, I mean, what an incredible, like, your resume of films, of great movies that you did. It's really impressive.
I got lucky. I was a playwright in New York, very successful playwright in New York, and Bob Rafelson was doing a movie. He's doing Postman Always Rings Twice. And a friend of mine was going to audition for a part in Postman Always Rings Twice. And I said, tell Rafelson he should hire me to write the screenplay. And she said, Dave, he's got a screenplay. He has to have a screenplay. They're auditioning for the part. So she goes, blah, 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 and he calls me up. I never met him. He said, this is Bob Rafelson. You say you should write the screenplay? I said, yeah. He said, yeah, I know you work. You're hired. And that's how I broke into the movie business.
Really?
Yeah. So I started right at the top. I'd never been in Hollywood.
How old are you?
What?
How old were you at the time?
30, maybe 31.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, I'm sitting in Santa Barbara. We're shooting in Santa Barbara, and I'm befriended by Jack Nicholson. And so every night, it's all night shooting. So I spent all night sitting in his trailer, drinking and telling stories, and me and Jack Nicholson.
Wow.
So then it's New Year's Day, and we're all going to watch the Super Bowl with Bob Rafelson. So it's Hunter Thompson, me and Jack Nicholson, and Scatman Crothers. So I ended up playing the piano while Scatman Crothers sang it. So I just had such a ball doing the movies.
So you knew Hunter?
What?
You knew Hunter
I knew him
Thompson?
from there. He's very, very silent.
Really?
Yeah.
He's probably taking it all in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good move. Jack Nicholson and you were sitting down there talking.
Oh, he's great. And listen, from that day to this, anytime we're in the same place, I haven't seen him recently, we used to see him a lot, he would always cross the room and see, great gentleman, say, ma'ams, how you doing? So sweet.
That is sweet. When you look back at these films that you've made, is there anything that stands out as being like an extraordinary accomplishment to you? Like anyone that you
Oh, that's a good question indeed. I did a movie with Alec Baldwin. My wife and Phil Hoffman, my wife Rebecca Pidgeon and Phil Hoffman were the stars, and Alec played. It's called State and Maine, and it's about a movie company on location. And they just lost Billy Macy's in it. They just lost their location because the star, played by Alec Baldwin, was found living a Girl Scout. And so they have to come to a new town, and they destroy the town in 3 days. It's pretty funny. Everybody's Sarah Jessica Parker, Sylvia, Julia Stiles, everybody's in the movie. And there's a scene where Alec Baldwin is out getting drunk with this underage girl, and he cracks up his car, and the car turns over, and he crawls out of the car. Clark Gregg's in the movie. And he says, looks around, and she's crawling out of the car, and the cops are coming, and she's underage. And he turns around, and he says, wow. I thought, we're about to shoot. So I say, hold on, stop, hold on. I say, Alec, when you crawl out of the car, turn around, look around, and say, well, that happened. So he jumps up and down. He's screaming, it's the funniest fucking thing ever. Woo, woo, woo. So he jumps. So that's the way the line is in the movie. And I felt very, very proud of that.
Wow. When you see all the crazy shit that happened with him on the set of Rust, like, how did you react to that?
You know, I did a lot of stuff with Alec. I directed him in that movie. It's wonderful.
The scene in Glenn Ross, Coffees for Closers.
Oh, yeah.
That is a fucking amazing
He's
scene.
marvelous. And he did, you know, how that scene came about is Alec was supposed to play a part, I think was eventually played by, I can't remember who. But then he had to drop out because he had a contract with some other show. And as often happens in Hollywood, they say, yeah. I know that we are done shooting, but we have you under contract for 2 more months. We might have to do reshoots. So I had to write him out. We cast somebody else. But then the contract finished, and they say, yeah, you're done. You can go do the movie. So Alec comes back. He says, yeah, what can I? I'm so heartbroken. I said, what can I do? He says, write me another scene. So I did. So that scene, which doesn't occur in the play, I wrote for Alec to.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's perfect for him.
Oh, it's wonderful. Well, and you know, that's another thing I feel very good about is a lot of salespeople come up to me. Every one of them says, oh my God, thank you. You got it so right. So I used to do that for a living. I used to work on a boiler room.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's an amazing scene. You know, he's a fascinating guy, Alec Baldwin. You know, because he's such a movie star guy.
Also,
You know,
I did a great movie with him and Anthony Hopkins called The Edge, which I wrote about these 2 guys, the world's richest guy, Anthony.
I remember that. Yeah.
And the plane goes down in Alaska, and they have to fight a grizzly bear.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
That was a fun movie too. Damn me, my God. I mean, it's got to be satisfying to look back and what all you've accomplished, and look back at this insane resume of great film.
Yeah, but what does it mean when my mother has to live on Social Security?
What does that mean?
That's a joke. It's an ancient joke. The psychiatrist, the rock star comes to the psychiatrist, and he's bitching and moaning and this and that and everything's da. And the psychiatrist says, yeah, but you're world famous. He says, you're worth billions of dollars. And the rock star says, yeah, but what does it mean when my mother has to live on Social Security?
I don't get that joke.
He's worth billions of dollars, and he's not taking care of his mother.
Right. What does that have to do with your film career?
It's a joke.
I know. It's a fucking terrible one.
Well, see, but that's the thing about Jewish humor, right? I'm a Yid, right?
Right.
My question. Okay, here's a great Jewish joke.
Okay, hit me with it.
Why did Hitler kill himself?
Why?
He got his gas bill.
That's a good joke.
Yeah.
That's a solid joke.
Okay.
It's a solid joke. You know, I mean, it's got so many layers to it. Gas chambers, you know, the whole thing.
Exactly so.
Yeah. Well, listen, David, it's been amazing talking to you and meeting you. I appreciate it very much, and appreciate our mutual interest in jiu-jitsu and martial arts, which we didn't even talk about. Red Belt's another film that you made.
Oh, Red Belt, man! You know, I got to work with everybody.
Yeah.
All the greats, and because you know, been involved with jiu-jitsu like you, but me for 20 years. And I was sitting. You got time for one more story?
Sure, yeah.
So the guy who's my teacher, my beloved teacher, Nato Magno, grew up in Sao Paulo, I guess.
Shout out to Hanato. I've known him since 1998.
Well, dude. So, and he grew. I think he's a cousin to the Machatis and the Gracies. So I knew them all, and I trained with a lot of them. And Hickson was doing an event that he staged, and it was an event down at some
Culver City, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
there for that.
Yeah, and he was at the control booth, right?
Right, because I
And
remember
so,
they were talking about your film back then. Yes.
and so it's before he did the film. He was going to do the film,
Wow.
but and we ended up with John Machado. He's wonderful. So anyway, so Hicks says, you're with Dave. I know you. We know him for around. Just come sit in the control booth with me. So I'm sitting and watching, and he says, he's trying to reason away. How do you put jujitsu? How do you dramatize it, right? Of course, there's
Right.
MMA, but there's something else, which is just straight up jiu-jitsu. It's very hard to.
There it is.
There you go. It's true. Telegia 4 and John Machado. How do you dramatize it? And I said, I came up with this idea. I said, wait a second. What about if one of the guys has a infirmity? You assign. You in effect cripple him. For a moment, not really. He loses an arm. He can't use his arm. He can't use his hand.
Right, you tie
his
it
leg,
up.
blah 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 blah.
Right.
And so I'm coming up with that while I'm working with Hicks over there, and I told it to him. And he kind of he was considering it, but then he got called to train for some fight he was going to do for $5 million. You can remember who he was fighting? I remember. So he went down to Brazil. But I got really lucky with that cast.
Yeah, I think that was probably the early days of Pride. If I wanted the timeline, I think Red Belt was 2004.
Maybe.
Is that right? Am I guessing right? I think that's, if I'm guessing correctly, that might have been Funaki. That might have been Hickson's final fight in Coliseum. I think that aligns correctly, which was like probably his biggest fight and the most respected and dangerous opponent, and it's one of the more spectacular victories too, because he chokes Funaki out completely, and you see Funaki going unconscious. Funaki doesn't tap; he just goes to sleep, and then Hickson climbs off of him and kind of like kicks him off of his body
Ouch.
and stands up. It was wild.
Yeah.
That's the final fight of Hickson's career too. Is that right?
No.
2000
What you're talking about happened, but
Funaki fight.
it says 2003, Antonio Inoki offered Hickson $5 million to fight against Fujita, but had no answer.
Oh, but Fujita didn't fight him.
It does. Yeah, it says they didn't fight, but he had an offer on the table for $5 million around the time
yeah,
that they would have been
that's-
shooting
that
this
was the
movie.
time. And then the Funaki fight was when?
2000. So it was a
Oh,
few
it
years
was
before.
2000. Oh, that's right, Coliseum 2000. So it was before that.
Yeah.
So Hickson never did wind up fighting again.
Correct.
Okay. There was time. I had dinner with Hickson and his son and his wife once, and he was talking about they were trying to get him to fight Fedor,
Yeah.
which would have been incredible.
Oh, they would.
You think you would have kicked Fedor's ass?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you're a true believer. That's cute.
I certainly am. Well, so wait a second.
I would never say anybody was going to kick
That's
Fedor's
right.
ass back
Well,
then.
okay.
I watched Fedor Crow Cop today at the gym. I was working out today at the gym, and they had Fedor versus Crow Cop on the big screen. I forgot what a fucking incredible fight that is. Fedor is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, heavyweights of all time.
Marvelous.
You know, I don't think anybody could say that anybody was going to kick Fedor's ass back then.
Yeah.
Not in 2000. You know, it's just he was too fucking good. From 2000 to 2000, whatever it was, 2005. There's a certain amount of years that an athlete, particularly a combat sports athlete, can compete at their very best. You can't do it forever.
That's right.
It's only a certain amount of years. And I maintain that during that time, like when Fedor fought Nogueira, when Fedor fought Crow Cop, when Fedor was the fucking man. He could do anything. When Fedor fought Randleman, he could submit you off of his back. He could knock you out standing. His ground and pound was ferocious. He was stoic, dead-faced, just a fucking technical assassin with a bulletproof mindset. Like, you had to beat him. And until Fabricio Verdum came along and triangled him, nobody even came close. You know, Fabricio Verdum was the first guy to really solve the puzzle and crack the code. And then from then on, a lot of people beat him. But I mean, you know, that's just wear and tear and time and just there's sheer numbers, you know. So enough people.
I had to go up to. You can cut it off. I don't
just
want you
keep
to
going, man. We don't.
So two stories. One is that I had to fight the old, had to find the old man, the old sensei in Red Belt. And we were thinking, who are we going to get? Who are we going to get? And we kept saying it should be somebody like Danny Inosanto. So I know Danny trained with Danny, so we kept saying it should be someone like Danny Inosanto.
Right.
So then at one point, Nata says, well, what about Danny Inosanto? So we cast Danny, and he said the second most flattering thing in the world. I was rolling with him. He said, "Are you sure you're a writer? You don't fight like a writer."
That must have felt good.
Oh, it felt so great.
Yeah, I mean, that's lineage, man. I mean, he's straight from Bruce Lee.
He gave me a signed that Bruce had signed and Danny signed. It's in my office.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
He's good friends with Jean-Jacques,
Yeah.
who I got my black belt from. So you know, he's always speaks very highly of
We just saw
Jean-Jacques.
Jean-Jacques. We just had
Oh,
lunch
yeah?
with him a couple of months ago. Yeah.
I love that guy.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
Yes, he is.
David, thank you very much.
Yeah,
thank
you're
you.
welcome.
I really, really appreciate it. Really enjoy it, and it was an honor to talk to you, to sit down and just shoot the shit with you.
It's great
And your
talking
book, it's out right now? It's
Oh,
out,
yeah.
Yeah, today. It'll come out. There it is. Recessional, The Death of Free Speech, and the Cost of a Free Lunch. David Mann.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
And we're up. You got a cookbook? What's going on?
Yeah, come out with a fucking cookbook.
Are you a good cook? Legitimately?
I
see you
think
cook
so.
on Instagram. Looks like you're
Yeah.
into it.
I am. Food has always been a pretty big part of my life. I grew up in a family of cooks. I actually consider myself probably the worst cook in my family.
Don't say that before you sell in your book.
I know, but like I'm still pretty good. Like both my brother Dan and my other brother Michael are both. They're phenomenal.
Your brother Dan has the nastiest guillotine finish I've ever seen in all my years of watching MMA.
Yeah.
That won the IFL where
Yep.
he had that dude pinned up against the cage. It looks like his head is gone. It's looked like it's disappeared. Like his head is, it's like the way it bends over, it's like, folks, it's like an elbow. Like
It doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
No, I didn't
It's
e-
sideways.
I didn't see that. We were on the opposite side of the ring. I didn't see that until the next day. I was like scrolling through some pictures on one of the forums, and I was like, "Holy shit!"
Here, watch this. Here, let's see. Look, let's see if they can show it from the beginning again, please. Okay, here it is. I'll show it.
Yeah, folds him in half.
No, when he stands up, see, he's still fighting, like right there, there. What the
It shouldn't
fuck,
work.
man?
Yeah.
How is that possible? Look at
Nope,
that.
nope.
Look at that.
It looks like
How
it's
is that-
disconnected.
How is that possible that a neck can do that? He's literally hearing his own heartbeat, right?
I'd be dead.
I think that's the craziest guillotine I've ever seen in my life, which is amazing because think of how many guillotines you've seen.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody do that. I mean, that's a wild guillotine.
it is.
The IFL was weird because there was good fighters and good fights, but the concept was so goofy that people were like, "What? There's a team?"
Yeah.
And like your team wins. It's like they were doing it like wrestling teams, right? Like it's
Yeah.
kind of like you could win your match, but your team could still lose, and like there was team names, and there
Yeah.
was
And I think of other couple promotions have like tried to do something similar, and it just doesn't seem to work in MMA.
I don't like what the PFL does either, where they have like point systems. And
Yeah.
you get a point for more points for finishes and more points for this, and so you're
Yeah.
ahead. And like, I'm not.
It's weird.
I can't pay attention
Yeah.
to all that.
Just
You
let us
know?
fight.
I think it's like they see how people are really into stats, like rebounds, and he's got most assists and this and that. Like, there's a lot of guys that are like numbers guys.
Yeah.
They can tell you, this guy ran for this amount of yards and this and that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they love those statistics. But in MMA, that's just like,
Yeah, people just want to see us punching each other's heads in. That's really what it is.
you're
We don't need to count.
over complicating what's essentially the purest sport.
Yeah.
It's so pure. I mean, you could show an MMA fight to someone who has no fucking idea what's going on, and they'll go, like, "Oh my god!" Like you show them cricket, and they're like, "Why?
Yeah. What's the point? What's
Why,
the goal?
why do you have a paddle? Like, what's happening here? How's this work? You know? Like, you have
Why
to,
is he throwing the ball like that?
right? Or baseball. Like, baseball is American pastime, but if it wasn't, and someone tried to invent it today, people would be like, "Get the fuck out
Yeah.
of here with this game."
Too complicated.
It's just, what is going on here? He's stealing bases. He gets to steal bases. Like, what's happening? You know?
Why 9? Why 9 innings? Why 9
Yeah.
dudes?
And what's going on with the pitcher with his fingers? What's he doing there? He's the catcher and the pitcher communicating in some weird way. You know?
Yeah.
But how about when a guy like can, the catcher will stand away from the base and he'll intentionally walk him? Like, what are you doing? Like, what is this bullshit?
I guess it's yeah.
You're cheating.
Strategy, right?
You're
Yeah.
cheating. Throw the fucking ball. Throw it. Try to strike him out, you fuck. It's silly.
Yeah, I guess there's some silly stuff that happens in MMA though, and you know,
What's the silliest thing?
I don't like because I mean I fell in love with it watching like the early days, watching Pride and the early days of the UFC where it was like dudes were just going in there to beat the fuck out of whoever was across from them, and you know, like when I see a fighter try to game the clock. You know, I understand why they're doing it because they want to win, right? But like my whole goal is to not have the judges have any fucking say in it. Because I got 3
Questionable.
schmucks. Yeah, the questionable would probably be a better word than calling them schmucks. On the outside of the cage, like that have zero experience in the martial arts for the most part, a lot of them.
A good percentage of them, unfortunately.
And yeah, they're picking who's going to win or lose, and like
Yeah.
I get paid twice as much if they think that I win. So, like, I think that you know the purest part of the sport is when 2 fighters are just trying to
for sure,
beat the shit out of each other.
undeniable.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some really good judges out there. We should acknowledge that because they don't get enough love because there's so many bad ones. You know, it's like I feel like number 1 hardest job is fight. Number 2 is referee.
Yeah.
The referee's the hardest job, like because
Yeah.
they can step in too soon. The guy jumps up. What the fuck?
Yeah.
The worst is when it's a submission.
Yeah.
You know, like when someone is like fighting their way out of a submission and then the referee separates them. You're like, oh my god, what have you done?
Yeah, and you can't restart it.
Yeah,
'cause
well,
of the way
they
the rules
did
are. Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
You remember Murilo Bustamante
Yeah.
and Matt Lindland? He had to tap him twice.
Yeah.
Lindland, he caught Lindland in an armbar, and Lindland's like, I didn't tap. I didn't tap. Which is like, you fucking definitely did.
You gotta make sure. Yeah, like let them rip
Yeah.
rip you off of them.
There's only 2 times in the UFC that I can recall that a fight was restarted. And there's that fight, and then there was another one that was actually not restarted, but redone. Conan Silveira and Sakuraba. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Big John McCarthy
Yeah.
stopped the fight early. Sakuraba dropped for a single, and he thought he was out cold.
Yeah.
And Sakuraba he got hit with a punch and dropped down for a single, and they stopped the fight, and Sakuraba was like, what the fuck? And they were
Yeah.
in Japan. So because it was UFC Japan, they're like, what are we doing here? And it was actually proved to be a historic moment because then he came back and submitted Conan. And everybody's like, what? He submitted a black belt in jiu-jitsu? Like, that was unheard of. Like, you never thought that a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu could get submitted.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Brave Search. Now there's a real, private, and independent alternative to all those big tech search engines. Brave Search. And what do you get when you're independent of big tech? A little goddamn privacy. Brave Search doesn't track you, your searches, or your clicks. They can't give your data away to other companies or governments because they don't even collect it in the first place. And since they serve results from their own built-from-scratch index of the web, they're never censored, filtered, or victim to bias. Plus, Brave Search is built right into the Brave browser for an all-in-one protection against big tech. You can block creepy ads and trackers by default when you search anonymously for better results. With 60 million browser users and 14 million daily searches, Brave Search has all the quality, nuance, and breadth that you'd expect from a mature search engine. JRE listeners can now search without a trace. Download Brave today at brave.com/Rogan and see what private, independent search looks like. Tap the banner or visit this episode's page to download. This episode is brought to you by Buffalo Trace. This is some damn good whiskey. And you know something's got to be good when it's been around a long time. And Buffalo Trace has been around a long time. We're talking a really long time. Like crafted at the oldest continually operating distillery in America. Long time. They've been making Buffalo Trace there since 1773, more than 200 years. Even during that bullshit Prohibition era, they somehow got a permit to continue making whiskey for medicinal purposes. And in that time, no other distillery in the world has won more awards than Buffalo Trace. Made from corn, rye, and barley, and aged in new oak barrels, it matures for twice as long as most bourbons. The whiskey in the barrel is not ready to go in the bottle. It doesn't. Simple as that. The result is a bold, robust flavor that is still incredibly smooth. So get your hands on a bottle of Buffalo Trace bourbon and discover for yourself why this whiskey wins so many awards. I will be sipping on some tonight. Distilled, aged, and bottled by Buffalo Trace Distillery. 90 proof, Franklin County, Kentucky. Buffalo Trace. American, family owned, and independent. You know?
Wow.
So those are the only two times that I know of where a fight was like, but there's a lot of times where I think it should have been that way, where they should have probably let him continue.
Yeah. It's a like as a fighter, it's I feel like it's tough because the ref is there so I can fight again. I want to choose my way out. Like let me decide that it's enough, but I do appreciate that they're looking out for us, but like you said, it's not an easy job. It's not an easy job at all. My last fight, I thought it could have gotten stopped a little bit quicker, and that's probably because I haven't knocked a lot of guys out. I knocked him down, and it was like I threw one or two. They kind of hit glove, and then it was like a second one just sunk in. It's like, dude, that didn't need to happen, and then it's still going on. Mm-hmm. So I was a little bit amped up, post fight, but it's a difficult spot.
It's the hardest spot other than fighter.
Yeah.
Commentary is probably the easiest because you just kind of saying what's happening. You don't really,
I don't know. You guys do a lot of fucking work, like.
It's not that hard. It's not that hard. The work I do, like this weekend's a big event. The work I do is fun.
Yeah.
Like I'm watching fights.
Yeah.
Like all week I'd be watching fights. There's some folks that I haven't seen fight before. I'm gonna watch their fights. I'm gonna go back and like look at the records, look at their history and stuff like that. But it's not. I don't even consider it research. I'm just excited. I just think if it's fun. Like if I was doing that on hockey or something that I don't really follow, then it would be work. I'd have to write stuff down. I'd have to really think about it. But I'm looking forward to it, so it's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think fighting's easy.
Well, it's amazing. If anybody saw you and you said like this guy has some of the most fights in the history of the sport, like you in the history of the UFC, like who fucking has more fights than you? Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah, nobody.
How many fights do you have in the UFC?
39.
But what's crazy is you don't look fucked up. You don't talk fucked up.
I try not to.
You don't at all. Like if I introduced you to someone and I said this young man has the most fights in the history of the most brutal combat sport in the world, they'd be like, "What? You?"
Yeah. I think I found the thing that I was kind of built to do, because that's one of the things that people don't understand. Like I've never had surgery. Like knock on fucking wood.
That's crazy.
Like nope. The only bone that I've ever broken is I chipped my my sinus when Dan Hooker kneed me. Like chipped the outside of my sinus. That's the only bone I've ever broken.
Really? And that just heals up on its own?
Yeah. There was nothing they could do for it. But like And I've been bounced around outside the octagon, probably worse than I have been inside the octagon. And it's like, shit, man. Like I was just kind of like built to take lumps, I guess. I've got a fucking giant head for a 5'8" dude. And I think that's helped me, absorb some shots. And then stylistically, I try to like, I do sacrifice some power for trying to be protected.
Well, you're very smart defensively, as at the same time you're hyper aggressive,
Yeah.
which is very interesting. It's a good combination of two things. Yeah, but you're also very good off your back too. It's like the combination of all those things. It's like you can. There's not a place where you fight where I'm like, ooh, this is not his best. Like there's some guys that get taken down. You're like, he's kind of fucked here. Like you don't have like a spot like that where you're in a bad position.
I try. That's one of the exciting things about the sport is there's so much shit to do and to learn. It makes it difficult on one side that like you have to try to get in workouts for not only to be a good technical fighter but a good athlete, and then you're working on ground stuff, clinch stuff, wrestling, striking. So there's so many pieces to the pie that you got to like stuff in there. It's not like, hey, all I do is grab a ball and run.
Right.
So we have to find your strength and try to fight to your strength. And I think that's an issue that sometimes fighters get away from, is they learn new things and then they don't fight to their strengths that like got them there.
Right.
Like I've done that in the past.
In what way?
When I fought Gray Maynard, like that was my third fight in the UFC. Tough dude, good wrestler, better wrestler than me. Big step up. But like to that point, I really hadn't been doing like private striking training. Like
really,
dude. Before the UFC, I was taking like Thai classes at night, like group classes.
Like a kickboxing class?
No, well, first 6 fights, yeah.
Really?
Basically, yeah. My first 6 fights, I started out at a place called Planet Jiu-Jitsu, tiny, little bit bigger than this this studio here, this room of the studio. I was taking like cardio kickboxing classes because I had never thrown a punch before, and it was helping me, but the ball had already started rolling, so it was like, fuck it, like we're just gonna go.
Take me back to like, what was your initial martial art? What was the first thing you ever
Wrestling.
did? Wrestling.
Yeah.
And that was in high school, or
that was as soon as I could walk.
Okay.
My mom's side of the family, pretty fucking good, wrestling locally, and then one of my uncles was a 2-time national champion for Lehigh. He was actually an Olympic qualifier in 1980 when we boycotted. Wow. Mike Frick, yeah. So like his wrestling career was done before I was born, but his younger brother Jim, who's also my mom's younger brother, he wrestled at Lehigh as well. Never quite made it to All-American status. One of my first memories is watching him wrestling at Lehigh. I think I was like 3 or something like that. And I remember it because he ended up breaking his ankle that match. Oh. But as soon as I could walk, I was pretty much on the mats. I wish I would have been a better wrestler, but I was a late bloomer, physically and in the sport of wrestling too, I think.
And then you go from there to jiu-jitsu?
Yeah. So I wrestled through high school, 1 year at Virginia Tech. It was a learning experience, wrestling on for a D1 program. Like I walked on late, and 3 weeks later was starting, wrestling at a weight class that I probably shouldn't have been wrestling at too, 141s. And yeah,
too light or
too light? Yeah, way too light. We they can't do anything about it now, but we snuck by the hydration test.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I carried a cup of my coach's pee down to the trainer's office.
Oh really?
Yeah, since I came on after all the hydration tests and all that stuff, so it was like, hey, this will work.
Wow.
So like I said, it was an experience wrestling in a room full of multiple time state champs and stuff like that, and it taught me a lot about kind of surrounding myself with people that support me because I didn't quite have that in the coaching staff. I wrestled for a year. Was pissed off because I didn't like, the program, and came back, was just working a little bit, and my brother and I, Dan, were messing around at work, working with our father, and finally decided to start training jiu-jitsu. And we walked into the first gym that we trained at in May of 2005. Came in, and we had been like fucking around, so we ended up like submitting some guys on the first day, and we told the coach, like, hey, like, we want to fight. And he's like, all right, give me like 2 or 3 years. And 6 months later, we were stepping into a ring for our first professional fight because there was no amateur at the time.
No striking training.
Literally 3 months of striking training at a cardio kickboxing
So
class.
at that place that you were telling me about, Planet Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah. So it was a trip. Rolled the dice a little bit. And then it was just like fight after fight. I mean, in a year, I had 6 fights, basically. So.
Wow. Well, that's the way to do it, right?
I believe so. I think that's one of the biggest issues with like local MMA right now is that they're making these fighters sign agreements, so you're kind of locked in, and then
How so?
Well, they're making fighters like local promotions, local shows are making fighters fight exclusively for them.
Oh, that's terrible.
And then they're only putting on 3 cards a year.
That's fucking terrible. They're doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, don't do that, guys.
Yeah.
Don't sign that. Don't sign that. Whoever's listening, amateur fighters, guys coming up, don't sign that. That will fuck you.
Yeah.
Those guys, that's unethical.
It is.
They should not do that.
Yeah.
Because if look, if you have a good promotion and you pay well and you put on a good show, people will fight for you.
Yeah.
But if you want to say that a guy has to be exclusive on a small card and then he gets a call from ONE FC or fucking Bellator or whoever,
a lot of them have like those, the UFC clause where like if one of the big promotions call you, but the problem is like
you should be able to fight for a bunch of small organizations.
Exactly.
You want to fight almost once a month.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly it. Like I have some guys that train with me that they don't get to fight as often as I feel they should. Now, they're
because of that, because of these
that.
contracts.
Yeah, they're the 2 different roads you can take. Like
you can't fucking be exclusive if you're a small company like that.
Yeah.
That is not. That's not ethical.
Especially they're making like, 1,000 and 1,000 maybe or $1,000 bucks. Like
it's
they
crazy.
don't even have win bonuses. Like
But it's crazy.
Yeah.
It fucks your development up.
Yeah.
Because if you can get a fight in every 2 months, man, you'll get more comfortable with fighting. You get more relaxed because
Yeah.
you do it a lot. And when you do it a lot, it like alleviates a lot of the tension and the pressure because you could fight more to your potential.
Yeah.
And the more you fight to your potential, the more confidence you get, the more you make gains in training, you start adapting and growing and learning how to compete. If you're with a company that's fucking you over and some shit, I've met some great guys that run some small organizations, but I met some guys that just think they're big time.
Yeah.
And it's a real problem. They act big
yeah.
time.
Yeah, and then like one of the new ones. Well, new. I mean, probably a few years old now. The idea is that they make these fighters have like ticket quotas and stuff like that. So then it's like dude,
That drives me crazy too.
It's the worst. It's the absolute worst.
Explain that to people who don't know what we're talking about.
So in their bat agreement, they're gonna have to sell a certain amount of tickets in order to get their pay.
Yeah.
So like they'll have a 40 ticket minimum or whatever that they have to hit in order to get their full pay, and then for everyone below that they're docked from their their win bonus or their show money. It's a bullshit fucking move. You kind of understand it, but it's like, hey, you're the promotion. Your job is to promote the fight.
Yeah.
So like you're the one with the marketing knowledge and then this and then that and the dollars to put down for ads and flyers and shit like that. Like if a fighter has the opportunity to sell a couple tickets and make a couple extra bucks, maybe, all right, great. But like what happens, and this happened to a bunch of my training partners, and this is like kind of led to one of the things that led to me opening my gym a few years ago was We had 7 guys on a local card, and all of a sudden there's a ticket quota. And
After they sign?
well, it was before they signed, but they didn't know that it was there. So you had like a group of, you know, seven fighters. So a gym, like, okay, like one guy could have handled the quota, 2 guys, but like 7, like then you're like trying to make sure that, you know, the training partners buy from this guy because he hasn't sold a
Right.
bunch. And yeah, it was kind of a bullshit move that you know, got put in there. But like, I don't think any of them like really hit it. You know, they all got fucking docked a bit. So it's like, you know, you're looking at a couple hundred tickets between the 7 of them that they got to sell. You know, so that everybody can make the money that they were.
And obviously they have
Prompt
that with
make.
everyone on the card.
Yeah.
So that's how he's selling tickets. That's
Yeah.
his promotion.
Yeah.
He's double fucking the fighters.
Yeah.
It really, like, if you want to say you're going to guarantee you $1,000 to fight, $1,000 to win, which I think is bullshit, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't like
I
win
agree.
bonuses.
Yeah,
I
neither-
fucking hate it, especially with bad judging. I fucking hate it. When I see a controversial judgment, and you know, and one guy, like, here's a good one. It's not necessarily controversial, but really close. Some people think it's controversial. Barberina and Matt Brown last weekend, right? Fucking real close fight.
Yeah.
The idea that Matt Brown is going to get paid half as much, you know, and one judge thought he won and 2 judges thought he didn't, and he's going to get half the money.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
It's a weird model. It really is. Like I like that London card. It's like everybody with a finish got a, you know,
That's a
got
great idea.
That's a fucking great
That's a
idea.
great
If you
idea.
tell the fighters that before the fight, guaranteed everybody's going out there looking for a finish.
Right.
You know, and that's what I want to see. Like that's what I'm trying to do in the fight. You know, no matter what. But like, as a fan, I want to see aggressive fighters, not guys that are just trying to, you know, game the clock, win a couple points, and you know, get the W because they granted they used effective octagon control, but like
Right.
I want to see finishes.
And that way you eliminate all the fighters that get fucked over by bad judging, because then they don't miss half their purse.
Yeah.
Because if you're missing half of your pay because of bad judging, that should stop. That should stop. That I just don't like that, man.
Yeah.
I don't like. I love the incentive, the finish incentive. That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Keep that. Keep that. That'll maybe make guys fight it more. Well, you know, people definitely fight more aggressively for fight of the night,
Yeah.
and performance of the night, and all that stuff. But keep the finish thing. That's
Yeah.
great. That'll incentivize people. But the win bonus, that's not incentivizing people, especially if it's a fucking close fight. Like Matt Brown could not have fought any harder.
Yeah.
Like that was a war, man. It was a
Yeah,
crazy fight. But the idea that he only gets half as much because of some subjective opinion on whether or not he did enough. And this is not taking anything away from Barberina. It was a great fight.
Yeah.
Real good fight. And, you know, maybe I would go back and score it for him if I watched it and, you know, tried to score it. But I remember thinking, God damn it, I hate that model. I hate it.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's weird.
It only exists in MMA. It doesn't exist in boxing, right?
No.
Have you heard of it in boxing?
No, I think it's all show money. You know, like it. I mean, maybe on the lower end, but for what I understand, it's a majority of it's just you get paid to fight.
Yeah, and if it is on the lower end, they probably copied MMA.
Yeah.
Does ONE FC have that? Did they have a fight and
No
win?
idea.
I wonder.
Never fought for him.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. That's very unfortunate. So you start off. You do a little bit. Where'd you start off for jiu-jitsu?
That place.
Same place, Planet
yeah,
Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, it was like
so
no
cardio kickboxing.
cardio kickboxing, like no-gi jiu-jitsu, tiny little room.
Did they have any fighters yet?
Well, that's why we went there, because they had a couple of fighters. It was the closest place that had like an MMA team at the time, so I signed to fight Frankie Edgar in November of 2006, and the gym was kind of like it was breathing its last breaths. You know, like people at the gym kind of knew it was gonna go under. And it did, like 3 weeks before the fight.
Oh, no.
So it was like, it was a shit show of a camp. You know, like Frankie was training with Team Rhino at the time, which was huge. They had like 60 fighters, something like that. And I had like 2 16-year-old blue belts and like a purple belt and another purple belt who was 305, and like I had Dan to train with for like 2 weeks. He had cracked a rib, and then like the first sparring session, I just hooked him to the body, and I was like, ah, fuck. So he was out. So it was a shitty camp. Great fight. Frankie and I I've never seen the fight, but I had people coming up to me for years after that one, like, dude, that fight with Frankie was crazy.
Do you watch your fights afterwards?
Not usually.
How come?
I don't know. Like, as I remember, like, I remember the good and the bad, you know, and it's like, I should, but like, I'm focusing on like what's next, and just trying to get myself better and work on those things. I let my coaches kind of peel that stuff apart.
Do you watch tape on other guys, on opponents?
Occasionally, usually just to see them fight, you know, but like, I'm not trying to break things down, because I kind of what happened in that fight with Gray is that like I expect him to throw overhands and like looping punches, and he came out and he just fed me straight rights, and it was like, you know, I had been working with a boxing coach for a couple weeks, and next thing you know, I'm trying to like slip and move, and it's like, that's not me. But I'd been doing it for a couple weeks, so I kind of picked it up, and yeah, he broke my nose pretty early in the fight, and then continued to hit it. And yeah, it was like it was a good learning experience, you know. But
well, he's an example of a guy who had wars and then the wheels fell off.
yeah.
And now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp Therapy Online. There are a lot of problems out there in the world today that can affect each of us in different ways, and we can't always figure all of it out on our own. When the shit hits the fan, it's sometimes easier to dwell on the negative than stay focused on finding a solution, and a therapist can help you work to become a better problem solver, making it easier to accomplish your goals, big and small. If you're thinking about giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, accessible, affordable, and entirely online. Fill out a short survey and be matched with a licensed therapist that you can talk to via video, phone, or chat. Plus, you can easily switch therapists at any time. When you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/JRE today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/JRE.
Basketball's back. Is there anything better than killer crossovers, buzzer beaters, and overtime thrillers? That's why I'm celebrating the return to the hardwood with DraftKings, an official partner of the NBA. Right now, new customers get a free shot at a share of millions of dollars in total prizes with your first deposit. Playing daily fantasy hoops is easy. Just pick your lineup of pro basketball ballers, stay under the salary cap, and rack up points for three-pointers, rebounds, assists, and more. Score big, and you can score big cash. And with a free shot at a share of millions of dollars in total prizes, it's the perfect time for me to show off my basketball IQ. DraftKings is safe, secure, reliable, and you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings app and use promo code ROGAN. This week, new customers can get a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes. That's code ROGAN, only at DraftKings. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details.
And now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp Therapy Online. There are a lot of problems out there in the world today that can affect each of us in different ways, and we can't always figure all of it out on our own. When the shit hits the fan, it's sometimes easier to dwell on the negative than stay focused on finding a solution, and a therapist can help you work to become a better problem solver, making it easier to accomplish your goals, big and small. If you're thinking about giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, accessible, affordable, and entirely online. Fill out a short survey and be matched with a licensed therapist that you can talk to via video, phone, or chat. Plus, you can easily switch therapists at any time. When you want to be a better problem solver, Therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/JRE today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/JRE.
Yeah.
Why do you think you have been able to fight the way you fight and not have the wheels fall off?
Fuck if I know.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't, there's no...
Luck. Like I said, I think I'm kind of I'm built to get roughed up, built to get into the mix.
just durable.
Yeah, and like, and then there's definitely a portion of that is like skill set. Like I try to like. I try to not get hit,
Right.
Like, and I'm willing to like if you keep your hand up, right? If I throw a left and my right is glued to my face, I'm probably losing a little bit of power than if I like loop that left over and drop my right hand. But then if my opponent throws a counter, I'm more protected.
Right.
And that's what I'm trying to do. Like, I'm trying to land good shots and hit people hard, but be protected at the same time, because I also consider myself a bit of a counterpuncher. So like I'm looking for somebody to throw something at me so that I can, snap something at them. And I just I don't fucking know.
It's kind of crazy though if you really think about it, because we all know guys that how do I put this charitably? They should have stopped a long time ago, and they kept going.
Yeah.
And we all know them. Like we see them backstage, and we're like, oh.
Yeah.
Like there was guys at a certain point in time where I'd see that they were on the card, and I would just like raise my eyebrows and take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because like they probably shouldn't be doing this anymore.
Yeah. And then you see it, the opponent, and you're like,
That's what's scary.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you see them. A lot of times they'll leave and they'll go to other organizations. They're like, oh boy, they were already having problems, and now they're, it's a business that's unforgiving,
Yeah.
and when the brain goes, when the chin goes, there's no return. I've never seen anybody where their chin went and then they made a comeback,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden it's back.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
you?
No, I have not. I haven't either. It's like you said, it's super unforgiving, and I'm not the type that I'm gonna try to tell people what to do.
Right.
But I'd like other fighters to try to make good decisions about it. It's like I don't consider fighting like super dangerous.